Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's amazing looking in the chat and seeing that people are sort of calling in from all over the country. So yeah, it's really amazing to have you all here. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a sort of as interactive session as possible. Of course, we're all hoping to be in Oxford together. And this was going to be a sort of big room with all of us in there together, mingling around and getting to know each other. But we're going to try and recreate that as well as we can on Zoom. And yeah, really today we're sort of discussing building a new entrant support network and kind of discussing what that's going to look like. We've got a few different speakers. Me, Georgie, I work with the Landworkers Alliance on new entrant policy and campaigns. We've got Holly also from the LWA working on Welsh policy and is going to be sort of taking forward the new entrant work with the Landworkers Alliance. We've got Amy from the CSA network. We've got Hatty, who works for the Landworkers Alliance as well on trainings and the Farmstart Network. And we've got Emma, who is working with FLAME, which is the youth sort of section of the Landworkers Alliance. Just to say that we're going to be monitoring the chat. So if you've got questions, put them in there and we'll sort of answer them as we go. As I said, I want this to be sort of interactive. So we're going to have a bit of a presentation at the beginning, just to kind of discuss new entrant support. And then after that, we're going to go into a few different breakout rooms and different interactive sort of sections. So feel free to jump in, chat, discuss. It's good for us to meet you all and for you to kind of meet each other. So there'll be space for that a bit later on. And also to say that we're going to be downloading the chat box afterwards, just to make sure that we sort of haven't missed anything. The whole point of this session and this kind of workshop is to really hear from you guys, get your experiences, and really sort of work collaboratively on what a new entrant support network can look like. So just to make sure that you are aware that we're going to be downloading the chat box afterwards. So yeah, cool. So to kick us off, I guess just a bit of an introduction. Who are new entrants? I'm sure that there's many new entrants here in the room today. And I guess if you define yourself as a new entrant, then you are a new entrant. And new entrant is a bit of a sort of clunky terminology, but essentially it is anyone that is sort of working the land, who's relatively new to working the land, or anyone that is sort of dreaming or hoping to work the land. So you can literally sort of be a new entrant if you've got the idea and the vision and the dream to one day be owning a piece of land or working on it. You could be in training, education, volunteering on another farm, paid work on another farm. You could be sort of writing a business plan and setting up your own land-based business. Or you could already be on the land running a farming business or working in the forestry and woodland sector for sort of, sometimes we say up to sort of 5 years, but as I said, that is kind of defined by you and how new you feel to it. It really varies from sector to sector. And yeah, the kind of barriers that we face as new entrants, I work, as I said, with new entrants on policy and campaigns, but I'm also a new entrant myself, and I've been training and volunteering for a few years now in horticulture and also mushrooms. And you know, the barriers that I experience are similar to people that are trying to get into woodland management, are similar to people that are trying to get into livestock farming. Of course it will vary, but there's many barriers in terms of access to land, access to finance. Also for sort of many different communities, we experience different barriers of the type of support and access we're able to get. You know, a lot of people are not able to afford to volunteer on the land. So yeah, that kind of leads me into what kind of support we need. And the support that we need, I guess, varies along these things. It's kind of access to land, access to finance, community well-being, and really that's kind of what this workshop is about, is to ensure that we sort of feel the strength of the new entrant community around the UK, and we can kind of work together to support each other, sort of physically on the land, or whether that's sort of in mental health terms, building community, but also practically in terms of sort of training and mentorship, and sort of knowledge gaining and sharing within our different sectors. And so, yeah, that sort of brings us to the question of how can we build a movement-wide new entrant community? And as I said, really, that is for us to kind of discuss today. And each of our speakers will go through various aspects of kind of the new entrant world in the UK and how we're approaching it from our organisations and our roles. But there's a lot of scope to hear from you all and to bring in the ideas that you have in what type of support you need, and how we can really sort of move forward and build that community network to yeah, hopefully support us all in this kind of agricultural transition that we're going through in the UK at the moment. You know, there's potentially a lot of shifts that are happening in the agricultural sector. So there's a lot of energy for new entrants coming into land work at the moment. A lot of ideas, particularly around climate justice, social justice, and building those into our farms and our food systems. So yeah, it's exciting time. So yeah, hopefully we can kind of work together. So I'm going to now pass over to Holly.
Hi everyone. Yeah, as Georgie mentioned, I'm currently the Wales Policy and Campaigns Coordinator, and I will soon be taking over some Georgie's work on the Britain-wide new entrant specific campaigns whilst continuing the Welsh work. So just a little bit about what we've been doing in the last year in the campaigns team with Landworkers Alliance across Scotland, England and Wales. We don't currently have, we've got very few members in Northern Ireland and we don't currently do campaigns there. That is something we'd like to do one day, but if anyone is from Northern Ireland, I'm really sorry that we're not currently representing you, but do get in touch because it's something we definitely want to do. So just to start with Scotland, so we had a new Scottish policy person start about this time last year, and there's been a lot going on there. With Brexit in all nations of the UK, there's been new agricultural policy, and in Scotland, the Scottish team put together a manifesto about what they want to see in agricultural policy, and that was included in the manifesto was to recognise the value of previous new entrant grant schemes, to look at them and see how they could be improved. There was also a big consultation on changes to the subsidy scheme in Scotland. So currently subsidies come from the European Common Agricultural Policy, or the sort of replication of that since Brexit, and all nations are moving away to have more bespoke subsidy schemes. So in the response, we argued that there should be support for apprenticeships for new entrants, that any grants made available that would normally require match funding for new entrants that don't necessarily have the capital to provide much match funding for a new piece of equipment or machinery or infrastructure, that they should be able to offer that instead in kind, in work, for example. And there was also a local food strategy in Scotland. So that looking at how to sort of champion local food networks in Scotland. And again, our response highlighted the needs for new entrants, particularly on access to land, and focusing on making a lot of public land in Scotland available for new entrants, and also tackling inheritance tax. So inheritance tax at the moment across the UK really favours people who inherit land, and therefore, you know, at the expense of anyone who would want to purchase it. In both Scotland and Wales this year, there were elections to the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Senedd. And so both the Scottish and Welsh teams, we put together campaigns to highlight the what Landworkers Alliance members needed, and wrote to candidates to ask them to commit to supporting that, and that included support for new entrants in both countries. Moving on to Wales, we aside from the elections, there's also been the sustainable farming scheme in the form of the Agriculture Wales Bill, and that reforming subsidies, that will move to a system that away from payments based on area of land you own towards payments for environmental schemes. And so some of the key things for new entrants that we highlighted were to remove the current cap of 5 hectares that you have to be eligible, because obviously a lot of new entrants can't access. 5 hectares is actually quite a lot of land. Also highlighting the need to retain county farms as a route for new entrants, and finance and loans for land trusts and starter farms to have a route into farming, as well as grants and loans for startup costs. In addition, in Wales, there's also been an announcement of a community food strategy, which will be looking at how to build the local supply chain system, and also a new food bill has been introduced, which is looking sort of holistically at the whole food system. And we will be championing, these are both quite new, but we'll be championing the needs of new entrants in our engagement with that. On to England, and we've got Georgie's been doing a lot of work on the new entrant support scheme, which is being introduced by DEFRA. We should hear more about it in a couple of months, but the kind of policies we've been championing is that this support scheme should be focused on food production and on wider ecological and social benefits, and that it should be support available for both revenue and capital, because obviously, again, access to capital is really challenging for new entrants, and include accommodation. There's also been a consultation on a lump sum payment. That's a payment that farmers who are retiring in England will receive, and part of that, what we've advocated for is that lump sum be contingent on making the land available in a way with the infrastructure so that it can be farmed for a new entrant. Finally, we've published a document about the costs for new entrants, and that's a really useful resource to refer to, both actually for your own business planning if you're interested in what it's likely to cost you. Have a look on our website. This the new entrants into agroecological farming document will be there, but it's also useful to use in campaigns to highlight what the barriers to entry for new entrants are. Okay, I'm now going to pass on to Hatty.
Hi everyone, thanks for that, Holly. So yeah, as Georgie mentioned, I'm Hatty and I'm the Farmstart Network coordinator. I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to what we're currently involved with on the training team. So yeah, the training team, like broadly speaking, our aim is to support the agroecological training journey of all of us new entrants. So we're just aiming to meet the needs of you guys and try and break down some of the barriers faced in this area. And we're doing this in a couple of ways at the moment. So we've got a traineeship programme for trainees on farm placements. So we provide supplementary training sessions, farm visits, and opportunities for new entrants to connect with each other. We've got 2 traineeship programmes running, and they're limited to the southwest of England and Wales at the moment. The other thing we're working on is accredited training. Again, there's a gap here, which I'm sure many of you have recognised. After looking into developing our own level 3 curriculum in agroecology, we decided actually the better course of action to take quite recently is to work in collaboration with other organisations who are like-minded, developing a curriculum in tandem rather than our own. So yeah, keep you posted on that one. Yeah, so something else we're involved with, which as well as training sort of encompasses the issue many of us face with access to land, is called the Farmstart Network. And the aim of the Farmstart Network is to enable new entrants to have access to land, training and support. And so for people who haven't heard of them, Farmstarts are projects which allow people to hone their skills in growing or whatever kind of enterprise they're working on in a supportive environment. So they're intended to fill the gap in the learning journey of new entrants and bridge the gap between sort of traineeships and running your own business. So the whole sort of point of them is that they offer protected access to land, equipment, training and support. There are currently 5 operational farm starts, and we're working with a network of organisations to try and develop and expand this. In brief, that's a whistle-stop tour of the training team, and I'm going to pass over to Emma.
Just to note that there's a question in the chat. I don't know if Hatty, you could answer this. Elsie's asking whether these new policies, or maybe it was what Holly was talking to, are relevant for food growers because she's a flower farmer.
No, so the policies in all the 3 nations are have a large element that's aimed at environmental public goods. So if as a flower farmer you are you're improving biodiversity, then yes, you may still be eligible for that.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Emma. I work in horticulture and coppicing in Cornwall. I'm also studying towards a master's in agroforestry and food security with the University of Bangor at the minute. I'm on the coordinating team of FLAME, which stands for Food, Land, Agriculture, a Movement for Equality, which is the youth group of the Landworkers Alliance, and ECVC Youth, which is the European coordination of La Via Campesina. So FLAME is a union of 16 to 25-year-olds. We've got about 60 members at the moment, so it's a fast-growing group which was set up just last year in February. Our main principles are to demand food justice and enable access to good quality and affordable food for all, to enable greater youth involvement in sustainable food production and in land work, to promote agroecology as a viable solution to the climate and biodiversity crisis. And we do this by providing educational resources, training and support. We work in collaboration with other groups across the UK and further afield. And we also do campaigning and organise socials. So we're volunteer led, but we do have a lot of support from the Landworkers Alliance, which we're affiliated with. And we recently received funding from Farming the Future for a youth project linking the climate and nature crises with the importance of agroecological farming and food justice. So this is in collaboration with Students Organising for Sustainability and the National Federation for Young Farmers Clubs. So this is a project that is just starting this month in January and will finish in June next year. And some of the outputs of this project will be to create online webinars, provide educational resources and organise farm visits for young people to start making the links between the food system and climate change. I've also dropped the email for FLAME there if anybody's listening in wants to get involved with the group. We have got a meeting, a welcome meeting coming up on the 13th of January. So if you want to come to that, just drop us an email. ECVC is the European coordination of La Via Campesina, which is part of the international movement of peasants, La Via Campesina. So it's a grassroots organisation representing farmers and rural organisations in Europe specifically. And the main objective of ECVC is to defend farmers and field workers' rights, as well as promoting diverse and sustainable family and peasant farming. So I'm part of the youth articulation of ECVC. So this is all about bringing issues that are particularly pertinent to young people and advocating for policy changes. At the moment, we've got research with Coventry University, which is happening on youth exploitation in agriculture. So a lot of young people either have to work for free or don't have any contracts in agriculture. So we're collecting data on this to be able to push for policy changes that we're advocating for. And we're still looking for participants in this research at the moment. The only requirement is that you're under 40 and currently or previously working on a farm in Europe. So if you are interested in participating or know of anyone, then please send around this email and get in contact to participate in the research. We've also recently entered the claims for new entrants in the Common Agricultural Policy. So this is particularly relevant to countries in the European Union. So some of the demands that we've put forward is having a budget for young people who want to work in agriculture, including young people's voices in decision-making processes, acknowledging the role of women and migrant workers in agriculture, and having social protection schemes for young people. So yeah, that was just a brief overview of these two groups, which are really great to just meet other young people and get a bit of support in terms of training, but also just emotional support. So please, yeah, get in touch if you want to be in contact with these groups. And I'll pass on to Amy.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Amy, I'm the policy lead at the CSA Network UK, and we support community-supported agriculture farms across the UK. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of why community-supported agriculture, or CSA, the acronym that we use, is a good model for new entrants. So firstly, just to explain very quickly, CSA is a partnership between farmers and consumers in which the responsibility and the risks and the rewards of farming are shared. So CSA consumers who buy the produce, or members as we like to call them, are closely linked to the farm, and they often commit to buying produce for a whole season rather than on an ad hoc basis as you would with a veg box or with normal shopping. So the two biggest barriers, like we've already mentioned, to new entrant farmers are often access to land and startup capital. And CSA farms are usually very self-reliant. So the security that comes with members buying produce and committing to buying produce for a whole season or a whole year sometimes, and in some cases providing upfront payments for that, makes CSA really accessible for new entrants who have very little or no startup capital. And also, as a model, community-supported agriculture farms, they have very short supply chains. They produce and sell very locally. They have no or low retail, transport or marketing costs, and direct sales with their customers or members. So the majority of the money made is kept by the farmer or the new entrant, which is also helpful for those just starting out. And in terms of accessing land, many new entrant CSA farms actually partner with or collaborate with existing landowners or farmers or enterprises, and then we'll set up a CSA on an existing enterprise or farm. So to give an example of that, Teen Greens is a CSA down in Devon, and which was set up by two new entrant farmers from London, and they had almost no startup capital, and they went woofing around the UK and then ended up meeting a farmer down in Devon who wanted to diversify what he was doing. So they set up a CSA on his land, I think only just over a year ago, and they're now really successful CSA down there. So that's a nice example. And the CSA model also supports existing CSAs to train and incubate new starting CSAs so that they can be set up with minimal investment because they already have support and often a trusted customer base in the local community. And what I mean by that, to give another example, is for example, Kaitan is an established CSA in Swansea, and they helped one of their trainee growers set up her own CSA nearby. And they passed on their waiting list of CSA customers, those who wanted to sign up for one of their veg boxes, onto the trainee grower when she started her new CSA, so that the grower had their own trusted customer base already when they got started. And another sort of real benefit is that CSAs work a lot with volunteers from the local community, and often have no trouble finding volunteers because the local community, by nature of it being a community farm, want to get involved, and sometimes can be offered a work share so that they can volunteer for the produce. So it means for the new entrant farmer, there's a sort of fairer share of labour, and you've always got some help on hand. And finally, and very relevant to this session, is that we hear time and time again from the farms that we work with that the model itself and the support of knowing others are doing the same thing in the network is really helpful and supportive. And many CSAs run training for each other. And as a network as well, we facilitate a community between community supported agriculture farms across the UK and link people up and hold sort of regional gatherings and networking and things. And we also have a mentoring scheme where more established CSAs or those with an expertise in something partner up with starter CSAs or those with a particular question or who want to understand a particular aspect of CSA, and they can mentor them for a day or longer, which is a really useful, well-used scheme. Yeah, so just finally to say, I've just put our website there, but also I can share my my email. If you'd like to join us or ask any more questions, we offer support, information and a lot of training, and you can be part of our community. But yeah, just finally to say as well, we're really excited about the prospect of a wider new entrant community that isn't just CSA, because it's obviously useful for us all to be linked up as agroecological growers and new entrants. So thank you for setting up this session. I'm not sure who I'm handing over to.
I think that's back to me. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for speaking, and I guess that was, as mentioned, a bit of a whistle-stop tour through the kind of various levels of support that we offer at the Landworkers Alliance, FLAME, and obviously the CSA network as well. And you know, there's many other organisations working within our movement that also offer a lot of support. And we work in partnership with various levels of stakeholders that work with new entrants. We are a member-led organisation at the Landworkers Alliance. We're a farmers union, and so we work with all of our members to kind of understand the type of support and barriers that they're experiencing, and we then transfer that into our programs and into our policy. So we're really driven by our members and by you all. And so really this is kind of all of the work that's come out from all of our conversations over the last few years with new entrants. And I guess we've kind of really seen that there's a kind of whole
Have we lost Georgie?
Yeah, Georgie's frozen.
Okay. It looks like she's coming back. Should we go into breakout rooms now, or give a minute for Georgie to return?
Is that what was next, is the breakout rooms?
Yeah. So it was yeah, the breakout rooms with the Jamboard session. Mm-hmm. Perhaps if we just give Georgie a minute to return, and in the meantime, if anyone's got any questions. Well, I also actually had one thing I forgot to mention related to our work in Wales, is we're doing a project with Shared Assets as part of the bigger Resilient Green Spaces project, where we are matching up land seekers with public land authorities. So if anyone is interested, if you're based in Wales and you are looking to start a new farm or community farm, then I will post the link to the land seekers survey. It might say that the deadline has passed, but fill it in anyway. You can ignore that. So I will, yeah, I'll just put that now in the chat. And this question, the project is specifically in Wales, but obviously when we get the results of it, we will look at doing it in other places. It's in Wales because it was Welsh Government funding.
There are conversations, just to add to that, in response to Nicola, happening around something similar in England. Is definitely a need, and yeah, so conversations are happening, but nothing as yet.
And I'll just, a couple of other things I wanted to mention for people in, unfortunately, again, it's just Scotland and Wales, are both, in both countries, there are land matching services. So in Wales, this is called the Venture Scheme, which matches new entrants with retiring farmers to do sort of joint ventures on their farm. In Wales, it's called the Scottish Land Matching Service. And they also, both countries also have advisory services, which include advice for new entrants. So again, in Scotland, that's the Farm Advisory Service, and in Wales, that's Farming Connect. So I really strongly recommend, if you're based in either of those countries, to check those out. I'll put the links in the chat. And the inclusion of something similar in England is something we've put, that we have been calling for in our consultation responses. Yeah, I'll put the links in shortly. In the meantime, if anyone's got any more questions.
What I can do is share the Jamboard link in the chat, and we can start putting post-its in the different sections. So I've just sent a link to a Jamboard, which if you click on, you'll have different slides at the top that you can flick through. And it's just a way of all of us putting in ideas of maybe what's inspired you to get into land work, what was the support you feel that you need as a new entrant, or what support you got in the past that helped you, what sort of barriers you faced, and any new entrants networks that you know of that could be helpful. And feel free to just unmute yourself too if you want to drop in about anything.
Do you want us to start filling out that Jamboard? Yeah, shall we?
Yeah, if you click on the link that I've put in the chat, you'll be able to add post-it notes to the left-hand side. Is that all right for everyone? I'll put it in the chat again.
Okay, so it seems like Georgie is still struggling. Should we just go ahead and go into the groups? And then we can bring Georgie in.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So we're going to go into breakout groups and discuss the fill in the Jamboard, and so have a discussion in your breakout group to answer the questions in the Jamboard. Unless Amelia, was that Georgie that you?
Hello. Sorry.
Connected, Georgie. Oh,
Georgie's back in the room.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got kicked out. Sorry, everyone. But I'm back. I'm back. Thank you for holding fort, everybody, and sorry for that technical glitch. Hopefully it won't happen again. Cool. So I've seen that you shared the link to the Jamboard.
So Georgie, I'm just wondering, someone who's a co-host, would they be able to spotlight Georgie so she's back on the main screen?
Is that we've done it?
Yeah,
I think
we can see you.
Hello everyone, thank you. Cool. Okay. So I see that there's some people already writing in on the Jamboard now. So I'm going to re-share my screen. I'm not sure where we got to with everybody. But yeah, I guess maybe it's already been explained. The idea was for everybody to sort of go through the Jamboard if you've got the link, and type in all of the different stages of the Jamboard. So I don't know if you can see my screen there. Just checking that it's, if everyone can give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Great. So yeah, so we've got sort of different slides, and the first slide is inspirations. So inspirations and aims and ambitions of kind of getting into land work, why you do what you do, or why you want to do this type of work. I can see people already writing in, so that's great. If you click up here, the second slide is the type of support that is needed. So here it's kind of a bit of a brainstorming session of what type of support you've had access to that has been really helpful, or what type of support you'd like to get access to that you haven't already had. Of course, you could be at various different stages of a new entrant, as I mentioned at the beginning. So you could be just dreaming about getting onto the land or doing this type of work. You could already be running a land-based business and need very specific type of support, like putting up a polytunnel or whatever it is. And maybe you're working at an organization that that works with new entrants. Maybe you could sort of reflect some of the needs and wants of those new entrants that you work with. The next slide is the barriers. As we've kind of spoken to, a lot of is access to finance, access to land. But there are many different types of barriers that, you know, are not just sort of physical things like those, but it could also be, you know, having a sense of community. You know, it could be various different emotional sort of barriers that you experience getting onto the land as well. So yeah, we'd kind of like to hear all of the things that you kind of struggle with, so that these are the kind of the things that really drive the work that we do. And then the next one is new entrant networks. So this is kind of all of the different types of networks, maybe, you know, like FLAME, like the CSA network, like the Landworkers Alliance, that are working with new entrants, but there are many, many more. And there are many organizations, there are many membership groups, there are many sort of hyper local farming groups. Maybe you go on farm tours and farm visits at the weekends. Maybe, yeah, there are sort of many different examples of what these new entrant networks that exist out there already. And we're sort of really hoping to map all of these types of networks and understand what's already out there and how we can kind of move forward in a really strong collaborative way. So if you've got any networks that you are a part of, then pop them down there. And also if you've just got any other sort of tips or sort of support help that you could give to new entrants, then you can add them onto this slide. If you don't know how to add them onto the slide, over here on the left, there's a button that says sticky note. So you just click on that, you can choose which color you want, you can type whatever you want, and then I'll just put new entrant there so you can see, and then save, and then that will come up onto the particular slide. So yeah, sorry, I was kicked out a little bit, so a bit behind time, but I'll let you guys sort of go ahead, and I'll sort of keep flicking through and we'll have a look at what comes up, and then we'll kind of go into an open discussion of the types of things people have put on the Jamboard. Okay, so I'm going to flip back to the first one. We'll go through each of the pages. So yeah, as I said, this was going to be a kind of workshop where we're all going to be in the room together and we could all sort of shout out all of the different ideas that we had. This is as close as we can get online. And so I guess, does anybody kind of want to share any of the inspirations that they put on the board? You could read it out, or you could sort of elaborate on some of the things that you've said. So yeah, kind of opening the floor to hear from you all.
Yeah, my name's Jimmy. I'm in Bristol currently for this conference, but I work on a farm just south of Bristol. And in regards to the inspiration, just trying to visit other projects, and we were fortunate enough to go and visit, have a day at a CSA project in Somerset. And yeah, I think just seeing people do it in the flesh and how they do it and how it's unique to each sort of place and space is really inspiring.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Yeah, definitely going to see other farms is really inspirational to see what could be. Anyone else got any inspirations they'd like to share? Oh yeah, I see a raised hand. Sarah Palmer.
Hello, Sarah Palmer. I work for the National Federation of Young Farmers Clubs. So thank you very much for what we've heard so far. I just wanted to say I think collaboration is so important, and we are collaborating with students organising for sustainability and FLAME on a future project. And perhaps we could think about more ways of bringing people together who have the same aims and would like to find future opportunities. Perhaps this is for further discussion, but I think there's a lot of people who have similar thoughts, who certainly want to achieve the same goals. So thinking about future events and getting people together so that they can link up in a way that's beneficial for all. And I think we need to think about future business opportunities, who might offer them, and how people might match up with those opportunities. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, collaboration certainly drives all that we do at the Landworkers Alliance. And so, yeah, lots more collaboration. And, collaboration can happen in many different levels. We collaborate with government and decision makers, policy makers to kind of get through the types of support that you need in terms of planning permission and making access to land easier, although it's still very difficult. But we keep working, and but that can be right down onto farm level as well as collaboration between communities and farmers themselves. So yeah, collaboration is definitely key. Okay, well, let's just go on to the next slide, see if there's anyone wants to speak to the type of support needed.
Georgie, I think Alison had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, thank you. I can't see any hands.
I did, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I didn't manage to get onto the inspiration bit actually, but it was just to say that I think I've kind of connected a little bit on social media, I suppose, over the last year. And I've actually found that incredibly helpful, and like seeing things like the Landworkers Alliance and then finding groups through that, I think has been really like invaluable to kind of, sort of see people that are doing it. So it's just to say that I think that's quite a kind of easy and helpful, inspiring route in as well.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, it's really great to hear that, because we're sort of, as a part of thinking about what this kind of movement-wide new entrant support network can look like. Of course, that is working, as I've mentioned, all the different levels of sort of policy and organizational, but it's also that kind of community new entrant support and how we can communicate with each other, and how that works at a sort of hyper local and regional level, and then expanding out into a national level, and how we can kind of come together to have that support network nationally, but also to make sure that we've got sort of the more ongoing kind of day-to-day, week-to-week support in there as well. So yeah, it's great to hear that all the different sort of avenues and channels that people can collaborate over and speak through. If there's anyone wants to sort of shout out, we'll move on to the next stage. Luke, I see you've got a raised hand.
Hi, yeah. So I'm Luke. I'm from Sheffield, and I just wanted to talk about the support needed page. I think I saw someone else put a similar post-it to me, but I'm a new starter who's looking to change careers into food growing, and I found it really hard to find access to training or any kind of like workshops or education based stuff to learn about professional food growing. Like there is some stuff that you can find yourself just by like emailing people and volunteering and things like that, but in terms of like formal training, it doesn't seem that there is much support there at all.
Yeah, so I mean, Hatty, I don't know if you want to sort of jump in to speak to any training aspect.
So the capital C, pathway, capital P, 1, 2, 3, exclamation mark.
Hi, yeah, that is, I mean, you touched on a really good point there, and it's a problem that a lot of different organisations, including the Landworkers Alliance, have recognised and are trying to work on that kind of formal, sometimes accredited training in agroecological approaches to growing and farming. So yeah, I mean, it's the more people that kind of, it's good to hear it from you guys as well, you know, there's a need, and hopefully will be addressed in the forthcoming years. It's worth looking at what the Apricot Centre are doing at the moment. I can post a link to the website in the chat, but they are developing, and we're sort of working with them, hoping to a level 3 and a level 4 in agroecological approaches to growing. And that includes sort of farm-based placements, but the hope is, and the idea is, that it will be accessible sort of across the board for different enterprises and organisations, not just the farms that are sort of identified by Apricot Centre at the moment. So
great, thank you.
And I guess also just say it's hit on a really important point on how we find the types of opportunities that are available to us as new entrants. You know, it's we kind of constantly do, well, I certainly constantly do Google searches and trying to think of all the words. Okay, what's that? Where's that going to lead me? Okay, I'm going through many different organizations to access all the different things that they do. But it, you know, what we're sort of thinking about here is that maybe there's a way that we can kind of bring all of that information together, and we can kind of start mapping a pathway for a new entrant into the various different sectors. So whether that's horticulture or livestock or arable, and sort of course, there's so much diversity, and it's quite difficult to kind of have a bit of a snapshot, but at least a bit of an indicator of the pathway that you'd go through and the types of opportunities or the types of support and resources that are available to you at each stage of that pathway. Hopefully then maybe that would be a good way to kind of flag some of the opportunities and make it a bit easier, rather than constantly doing endless Google searches yourself. So again, to kind of have that online resource community network as well. Okay, we'll quickly go on to any barriers, if anyone wants to speak to any barriers they've experienced, maybe ones that we haven't spoken about yet. If there's no barriers, then maybe any new entrant networks we want to talk to.
I'm happy to talk about barriers. Sorry, my video is not working right now. My name's Nat. I work at Stroud Micro Dairy. And I feel like I've landed on my feet in a way because I found a position in between intern and farm owner where I want to work on a farm that's doing things in a similar way. But I feel like those opportunities are really limited in livestock farming as a new entrant. Sort of after intern, there's a massive step from intern to like a successful farm livestock business owner. And I feel like it would be useful to have some sort of network of people in similar positions who could talk to each other and share goals, and talk about maybe the idea of starting a business with someone else who's on a similar journey. Because especially with livestock, like there's quite a lot of demands where it's a lot more useful to have two people working together rather than one in like a skilled livestock operation. And like the startup capital can be like really expensive as well. So if you're not fortunate enough to find like a management position on a farm that shares your values, then there's a bit of a block there between intern and being what you want to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's a really important point, you know, and really speaks to the agroecological movement as a whole. And, you know, quite a lot of us really want to do justice to the kind of social parts of our food system, the environmental and biodiversity parts of our food system, and really build on that. And so sort of as a kind of community, very values driven. And I think kind of, again, a part of this is to try and make us recognize that there's a lot of other people out there that we can collaborate with. And as you say, to just kind of share in that support and the kind of struggles that you're going through at that particular part of the new entrant pathway, but also to kind of work together to then say, okay, how can we push through that together? So thank you very much for sharing. Okay, in
Georgie,
yeah,
there's a few people with their hands up. I don't know if you can see. The first one's Gwen. There's 4 people with questions.
okay, great. Yeah, we'll go through those and then we'll go into breakout rooms if that's okay. I can't actually see who's got raised hands, so
Maybe Gwen could go first.
Great.
Hey, I thought that under barriers, it was worth mentioning probably housing, like places that are cheap enough for new entrants to stay in the area, or like close enough to the place that they're working is probably an issue that comes up for a few people. And yeah, how that would then like make you reliant on having to be able to drive to get that job, or it to like would make it impossible if you couldn't live there, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. And you know, and that kind of highlights the various levels of barriers that we experience. You know, some of them are quite sort of immediate barriers, or they're barriers that we can kind of work through at a farm level or at an organizational level. And then there's kind of these larger, more sort of systematic policy kind of barriers that we experience, and planning permission and housing is certainly one. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. There's definitely been, from my work with DEFRA on the new entrant support scheme, we've been working quite closely with them to try and break down this particular barrier, because it's a huge thing for new entrants to juggle. So yeah, thank you for highlighting that one.
We've got another question, if that's all right.
Yeah.
From Elslane Brady.
Hi, it's Aisling. Thank you.
Aisling.
Aisling. No, it's an Irish name. No one ever gets it right. So it wasn't really so much of a question, but just just to mention that myself and my partner, we've just finished our traineeship at Tomlinson Market Garden in Perthshire in Scotland, and I'm very much feeling what a previous speaker was saying about that feeling. The gap between sort of intern or trainee to starting your own farm, and I'm feeling the kind of pressure that I might need to just start something, especially in this part of the country, because there appears to be more opportunities in the south of England for obvious reasons. But I'm looking for like-minded people, because ultimately we'd like to work in a cooperative sense, and we have some links already to potential land opportunities, but we're very much still in the learning phase and working for other people. But we would like to find and link up with other people who might want to start a cooperative market garden or CSA in sort of central Scotland. So if anyone is interested in that, please let me know, because I'd love to find some collaborators.
Nice, thank you. A shout out to collaboration, I love it.
And then there was one more hand up from Katie.
Great, thanks. Well, maybe we can come back to your question or sort of input, Katie, if that's okay. And we'll move now into the breakout rooms, so that kind of we can give more people an opportunity to speak and to kind of speak to each other. The ideas of the breakout rooms is to kind of come together, introduce yourselves, kind of obviously name where you're calling in from or where you're working from, and also kind of your sort of stage of a new entrant or your type of work you're doing with new entrants. And really this is to kind of meet each other, see if there's, you know, maybe there's more shout outs for collaborations, and really just to kind of get to know each other. But also it's to kind of speak through these various things that we've discussed on the Jamboard. So kind of talking about the type of support you've got or the type of support you need, the barriers you've experienced, and all of this kind of discussion in a framing of the question, which is, what would you want from a new entrant support network? So if you kind of get a bit stuck and not really sure, I'll write that question in the chat so you can kind of refer back to it. But yeah, what would you want from a new entrant support network? And so what we'll do is we'll go into breakout rooms for 10 minutes, so until 15:15, and then we'll have about 10 minutes of reflection, of hearing from the different groups. There's a lot more people here than we actually anticipated. So each of us as speakers are going to go into one room, and we'll sort of listen in and try and get involved in these discussions. If you haven't got one of us in there, then yeah, hopefully you can kind of manage amongst yourselves, and then we'll come back at 15:15, and we'll kind of have about 10 minutes of feedback, hearing from all of the different groups, and then we'll be finishing up at 10:30. So if we're good to go into those breakout rooms.
Georgie?
Yeah.
Are we aiming for each group to capture their thoughts, so that we can share them?
Yeah.
Yeah,
sorry if I didn't make that clear. Yeah, so if each group kind of have all of these discussions, and really this is also a space for you to kind of meet each other, but if there's kind of either you can present as a group, or as you can nominate one person to kind of do some feedback after. We'll have about 10 minutes of feedback time, so we'll hear from each of the groups about the types of things that you've spoken about. So yeah, make sure that you're listening and capturing. Thanks, Hattie. I think we're all heading back over now into the main room. Hopefully you all had some great discussions. And so now we've kind of got 10 minutes for a bit of feedback, and it'd be amazing to go through each of the groups. Matilda, I don't know how many groups in total we had.
I think I made 8 groups.
8 groups. Okay, great. So just over a minute each. Really quick go around to hear from everybody. I don't know who wants to start. If anyone wants to we can do a bit of popcorn if that is easier than going through methodically. If anyone feels that they've got an urge to speak about what kind of things are coming up in their group. Gwen, you've got your hand up? Go for it.
One of the things we talked about in our group was how useful it is to have like local connections. Like Briar, she was in our group, she told us how she had a neighbour. They've just brought a farm there, New Entrants, and the neighbour who had long been a farmer was really helpful because they had loads of local connections and they introduced them to loads of people, and how useful that was in terms of being able to borrow things off other farmers and just for the community, and just feeling like you're not completely alone in it. And I don't know, we didn't actually discuss this because we ran out of time, but I was thinking maybe a way to get those local connections would be, well, perhaps have it like a map or something where any other new entrants could sort of plot their location, so you could at least find other new entrants around you potentially.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And yeah, sort of any suggestions and things would be amazing to kind of hear a little bit more. Afterwards, I'm going to share a link so we can all put our contact details, and hopefully we can keep this conversation going, because we'd love to kind of make sure that this new entrant support network is really coming from what people need, and has a lot of the ideas that you've all put down on the Jamboard already. So if you want to, you can put different ideas down on there, and we're going to kind of take that away and analyze it afterwards. But yeah, it'd be great to kind of keep this conversation going beyond this, because as you said, yeah, we don't have loads of time. But anyone else that wants to jump in with anything?
Sarah, hand up.
Oh.
Thank you. Just very quickly, a few points. Finding the next position or your next move in your enterprise, labour and housing for that labour, having a central hub for matching up opportunities, and planning as far as housing goes. So that's a very brief summary of our group.
Yeah.
So our group was talking about having a place for all of the like training or mentoring opportunities in one place would be useful, just to avoid that intensive Googling and chatting to as many people as you can to try and find them. If there was just one place where you could say, look at all of the opportunities in London, that would be useful, and if it doesn't exist already. And also we were talking about potentially something like a WhatsApp or a Slack group where everyone can kind of talk together and continue conversations like this, but just more generally over the years.
Thanks, Luke. Anya, so you've got your hand up.
Just a quick, I found the group really interesting, inspiring. The thing that really came out was just how hard it really is, like a whole raft of barriers, from transport to doing something on your own to having to feel like you're always having to be a kind of like inspiring about what you're doing and not able to be open and honest with other people about just how difficult it is and how important it is to have people in the same position being able to say, oh, this is really, really hard, and I'm having barrier after barrier in front of me, particularly, you know, for a whole raft of different reasons, and that space is really valuable and important, I think, was the thing that really came out for me from the group.
Thanks, Anya. Amber?
Yeah, likewise. My group was really interesting. We had some good conversations. I think short, it was just that two of the main things was hearing more stories of people that have been successful in growing, particularly small scale market gardens. Someone called it, framed it as an origin stories, which we really liked. So sharing more of those, and just, I think, adding on to that, for more organizations to be collecting data, particularly from market gardens, showing how market gardening can be a long-term career and a viable, financially viable business. I think that that's another big thing that we would love to see in this space, so that people can actually be looking at growing and farming as a long-term viable career choice for people. So yeah, and anyone else in my group, please add in.
That's great, thank you. Anyone from any other group that wants to bring in something maybe that we haven't already discussed, or any sort of points to note from your...
Can I say something, Georgie, just quickly? My group, Anya just summed up my group really well, but I just wanted to, just in case anyone's not reading the chat, I think something that came out of it for me, and also from the chat, is people, even for people that aren't ready to do the growing part yet, I personally would find it really useful to have, I don't want to rely on Facebook, but a platform like Facebook where we could all come together, and as someone said in the chat, have no agenda, just a place for people to meet and to see where they're at. Because personally, we and people in my group were saying, just having people to collaborate with at early stages, and know that maybe in a few years down the line you're going to have like-minded people there that would want to set up something together, would be really useful and inspiring, especially if you're in a city or quite isolated.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of discussion kind of around Slack groups or Facebook groups, or these kind of making use of these online platforms to all sort of come together. And all of these ideas are really great, and as I said, all of the sort of things that you've put on the Jamboard is going to be looked at by us at the LWA and FLAME, and perhaps other organisations that we can collaborate with and pull our resources together to sort of understand how we can create those spaces for you all. And there was the idea of sort of regional new entrant focused farm visits in our group, so lots of the sort of practical things where we can get you to meet up, but also online platforms and sort of a hub for sharing resources and opportunities and jobs and all these types of things. So this discussion has been really, really amazing. Thank you everyone for sort of joining in and for sort of sharing your experiences. I wish that we could have heard from all of you, because there's loads of great experience and knowledge in here. I'm going to put a link in the chat right now, which you can put your contact details on if you'd like to. Your name, you can put an organisation or farm or whatever that you're affiliated with, and also your contact details, email address. We're hoping at the Landworkers Alliance, as I say, to collaborate with other organisations to take this kind of new entrant support network forwards. And so if you want to be involved with that, please share your contact details. I saw that Emma put on there that FLAME has a Slack group, is it, Emma? That you can sort of, they post opportunities on their FLAME Slack group as well. If you want to sort of be a part of the wider movement and all the things that we've got going on, then do, if you're not already, then do consider becoming a member of the Landworkers Alliance. As I said, we're a member-led organisation, and we really try to represent farmers across the agroecological sector as much as we can. So if you're not already a member, then join up to be a member. And yeah, also if you're between the age of 16 to 25, then FLAME is for you. So yeah, thank you so much to all of our speakers, and to you all for joining in. I don't know if any of the speakers want to say anything, any last remarks?
Just say I'm really looking forward to taking on some of this work from Georgie and having future discussions. On a specific personal note, I've just put a note in the chat. Anyone who's interested in getting involved in a market garden in the Cardiff area, get in touch with me. And yeah, I hope we can continue this. And thanks everyone for your contributions.
Likewise, just looking forward to chatting more, guys. And thanks for today. It's been very inspiring.
Hopefully see some of you in FLAME.
Yeah, thank you. It's very inspiring to see others are in the same place. I think this session was really needed. So thanks, Georgie and everyone.